But let's get started, right?
Yeah.
Year back in SaaS boom, there was a massive buzz around SaaS, right? The big message was SaaS will be touching about 1.3 to 1.6 trillion by 2030. India SaaS in particular will be about 70 to 100 billion of that. It continues to be a massive opportunity for founders. But this year, we are in a completely different sentiment, right? The public market multiples in SaaS continue to be at the lower end, which is around 5.5 to 6. During the heady days, we used to have 10 to 12x revenue multiple, but that's now stabilized at 5.5 to 6. There have been articles written about the end of SaaS or SaaS entering productivity capital phase, and even some have predicted end of software because of generative AI becoming big. I know you have a very, very strong point of view on this, including your own piece on everyone is bearish on Indian SaaS. I am not. So what's your view on SaaS market, SaaS as a market opportunity?
No, so I think it's a good question, Gauri, and two parts to it, right? One is just public sentiment, and then kind of what the future looks like. Now, it is natural when everything from the outside looks like, there are gray clouds, the storm is coming. It helps color your mind also, right? If the weather is very like dark and rainy and depressing, you also feel like, stop working and take a nap or something. So that is normal, right? And we have to fight that temptation and look at real information. Now, I think, at least when I think about the forward journey, right, I think there's a large opportunity because if you look at any company's P&L, companies spend around 10% of their total cost in software and 90% of it goes towards headcount, right? So, and if you think about absolute numbers, companies spend $300 billion a year on software, right? That is total like enterprise application spend, and $3 trillion a year in headcount spend, right? So salaries and whatever. Now, if you think about movement between those two, right? The beautiful thing about AI is, again, it is automating a lot of things. Uh, Companies in the future will spend differently, right? You'll probably spend less on people and more on machines. And that is the big rebalancing that is happening. And if you actually take 10% of that headcount spend from 3 trillion and move it to software, software spending is actually going to double, right? So I'm saying big picture, will companies spend more on software and machines versus humans in the future? My answer is a convicting, like with conviction, yes. Which pockets that will happen and all of that, we need to be thoughtful about when we pick the market, right? So I think definitely software spend from enterprises is going up. The question is which companies can actually capture that spending, right? So I'm bullish about the market overall and what unlocks can happen in the next 10 years.
And what's your view on Indian SaaS, right? Overall SaaS market, absolutely. I think as the spend on software and hardware and possibly generative AI picking up. And how do you view the outlook for Indian SaaS?
When you say Indian SaaS, you mean SaaS built for India or?
SaaS being built from India for anywhere.
Okay. So, no, so I think ultimately there might be some structural advantage, which is that, okay, cost of recruiting is lower and you can hire more engineers and you can build a platform company. In the US, I think Parker Conrad of Rippling coined this term compound company, that Rippling is a multi-product company early in their life because they're doing HR and IT and payroll. And this was celebrated, but companies like Freshworks and Zoho were always compound companies because we built a lot of different products, right? So I think Indian companies can hire more engineers, be multi-product earlier in the journey and capture more revenue. That has always remained, but it is not like it is some undiscovered secret. Companies in the US also hire engineering teams in India, right? So my belief is still the best teams globally win, right? And if you look at, there's a history of companies which have been born outside the Bay Area and outside Silicon Valley, right? HubSpot was in Boston, Zendesk was in Denmark, the Stripe founders are from Ireland, Canva and Atlassian came from Australia, right? And then you have companies like Postman and Freshworks, which were in India. So I think globally the best teams win. And we just need to aspire to be world class if we are competing at the global scale.
Got it. No, I think that's a very, very interesting thought, right? So structural advantage is there, but it's kind of eroding. And Indian teams need to be world class if you have to win in the new marketplace. Right. So I think that's a very, very interesting thought. I want to quickly segue into the where are the opportunities for SaaS providers, especially in the context of generative AI, Pranay, right? I think we have last 2 years have been super exciting for this technology with the releases coming almost every week, new technology getting announced every other week, right? And there are even predictions saying generative AI itself can be 150 to 200 billion dollars spend for enterprises in the next 3 years. I mean, this is a McKinsey report that was published in SaaS Booming, which says 150 to 200 billion dollar AI spend to be unlocked in 3 years by 2027. You're seeing this space very, very closely. So I have two questions. The first question is the hype real? Are enterprises really ready to adopt generative AI, right? And if it is so, where are you seeing the big opportunities emerging for founders?
So, yeah, again, good question. And I'll first share my framework of how to think about markets, and then I will bring it to life with one or two examples and data points, right?
Yeah.
So, first, like I said, if something is moving from domain of people to machines, 100% new market opportunity, and you have to play, right? And the first example of this is actually customer service automation, right? Where you have a lot of customer service, where you have large teams of tens of thousands of people. In case of HDFC, it's closer to 100,000 people just doing contact center work. Can you automate a lot of that, right? So if it is a new category which is enabled by AI today, which was not possible earlier, you have to play, right? One of our portfolio companies, as an example, Murph AI, does AI voiceovers, right? Now, voiceovers as a market is a market which is $10 billion a year, where people hire a voiceover on Upwork or Fiverr or through their brand agency to do this work. And, it would take creating one video with a voiceover would take 3 to 4 weeks. You have to book studio time, you have to get the artist, then you have to do 2 or 3 iterations based on pacing, and maybe you want to change one word, so he's to come record it again, right? And it would cost tens of thousands of dollars. Now you can type it in a computer and you can do it in like few dollars, right? So I think there are such markets where things which were domain of people, you can bring to domain of machine, new categories, absolutely must play. The thing to think about over there is that whatever you are doing should be something where probabilistic outcomes are okay, right? If they're deterministic, it is hard, right? And just to give you an example, when you're writing copy for marketing, there can be multiple different ways to write, right? American English is very direct, right? Like you speak. Indian is Victorian English, you write your however and therefore and furthermore and pad it up with a lot of filler words. So there are different ways to write, okay? Same way, if you think about something like, in customer service, one example could be something like automating routing, right? Of meaning it's not a Gen AI use case, but it's probabilistic. If I have a query, should I route it to the previous person who spoke to the customer because he has the context, or someone who has a particular skill, or someone who is available? Multiple paths to get to the answer, and you can decide, right? So if there's use cases where some amount of probability is okay, or someone said this well, they said if hallucination is a feature, not a bug, right? Even in text to speech, there's 10 different ways to say any word or any sentence, right? So it should be a feature, then you can apply AI. If it's something very deterministic where you need 100% accuracy and absolute fault tolerance, either it has to be done differently, or you need to have a human in the loop who can audit and approve, right? And to give you an example of that, if you take all accounts payable workflows, right? I'm a finance team, I get 1,000 invoices. Right now someone is manually looking at the invoice, making typing entries into an ERP system, and then manually putting a list in a bank account to process a payment. Can you have something which is just capturing an image, extracting that data and pushing it into an ERP? It works 70% of the time. Wherever confidence is low, it flags it to a human. Can you check this one? Right? So even if there are 10 people doing this accounts payable workflow, can you reduce that team to 3 people, and instead of the 7 others, you have software in its place so that it just works instant, real time, fast, maybe lower cost, right? So I think you have to think about how to go about doing this, right?
Hmm.
So new market, something moving from today people are doing it, tomorrow machines will do it, 100% play. If it is a category where there's existing software spend, then you need to be careful, right? And
Hmm.
I'll bring this to life with an example, but there has to be workflow innovation. And when I think
Hmm.
about workflow innovation, how you do the job has to change wholesale, right?
Hmm.
If there is step 1 to step 5, you have to erode that entire process, right? The second thing you need to have is actually uh, pricing innovation. And then the third thing is you need some type of distribution innovation, right?
Hmm.
Because there's already a company in that category. And not an AI example, but I will use Canva as an example, right?
Hmm.
So there were already tools like your Adobe Illustrator and all which designers use, right? Now, the product innovation with Canva was that Canva made everyone a great designer. Even my 70-year-old parents use Canva to create invitations and cards to share on social media, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So now if I'm a marketing team, I have a social media manager who has to make a creative. Instead of going to a designer, he can make it himself. So it's
Hmm.
eroding old workflows, right?
Hmm.
And shifting
Hmm.
the job from the designer to the marketer, number one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Number two was the pricing motion for Adobe was $250 per year. And a sales rep will call you and see how many designers you have and try to sell you license, right?
Hmm.
Canva said, okay, for $1, you can buy a template, or for $1, you can download a stock photo and use it, right? So they completely eroded the pricing model of
Hmm.
Adobe.
Hmm.
The third was distribution, where I said Adobe more sales led. Canva made it self-serve, right? And then
Hmm.
SEO strategy and template strategy became the distribution mechanism. If you go online and search for any creative on Google, the first link you'll get is probably a Canva template. You will click on it, you will edit that template, and you will produce, right? So there was product innovation where they made everyone a great designer. There was pricing innovation where entry cost came down to $1, so any user could use it. And then there was distribution innovation, so any user could discover it, right, in their day-to-day with a Google search. So I'm saying similar, if there's existing spend categories, that is the way you stack odds in your favor, right?
Understood.
And to the question of hype or real, the best companies, like if you take companies like Hagen and Synthesia who are doing those synthetic avatars, right?
Hmm.
These companies are going from 1 million to 30 million revenue in 12 months, right? So our
Hmm.
enterprise is buying absolutely. And the best AI companies are going from like 0 or 1 million to tens of millions of dollars in 12 months. And we've seen it in our portfolio as well.
Got it. Got it. No, this is super helpful, Pranay. I had one follow-up question to this. This is something that we discussed separately. Are there also specific areas where generative AI makes more sense? Because right now the buzz seems to be let's apply LLM on everything, right? Is this something that's relevant for every case, or do you see cases like maybe unstructured data or where there's verbal reasoning and language getting involved? Are these the use cases that are more prone to generative AI?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think basically the awareness you need to have is it can't be that AI is a solution in search of a problem. It's like when I have this hammer called GPT, everything looks like a nail. So you still need to think about what is the use case and is this applicable, right? And I think in the long term, the way we think about it is there's a lot of different models. Picking a model is like picking a database. Based on the
Hmm.
use case, you pick a database. Based on the use case, you can or cannot apply a model. But it is one tool in your toolkit. It's not the answer to everything, right? Uh, in terms of the other question, I think the capabilities I'm most excited about is a multi-modalities, right? That
Mm-hmm.
because you already have like AI where you can listen into like a call recording and make notes and all of that. But if I think ChatGPT's mission is they've created a Mac app and all of that, they can see your screen. Right now, next
Hmm.
step, if you have agents, is they can actually control the browser or control the mouse and then click on buttons and actually help you navigate things on your computer, right? So actually taking control of the UX gives you a lot of opportunity, right? Same way in enterprise use cases, I think just information on screens, ability to capture, consume, process them, or even documents, very powerful. And I think the other thing is just the ability to consume and index unstructured data, right? Because even if you think of CRM, right, there is so
Hmm.
much information that you can append to a CRM. If I'm talking to you on a call, I can sense your tonality and emotion. I can see your face. Are you smiling or frowning? Did you end abruptly or did you end on a positive note? When you send me an email, the email signature has the most current up-to-date contact information. Usually CRMs have stale data in terms of contacts and all, right? Your email might have your personal number. When I look online through a lead database, I might have some work phone number which no one ever picks up or it goes to a receptionist, right? Can I capture that email signature and automatically update my CRM, right? So there's just so much unstructured data which can be captured and utilized, which as companies we don't put to work, right? And if you think of old world CRM or any system of record, it is structured data and it's basically a database with an HTML form on top, right? If you can consume all unstructured data, use it to make better decisions and then use AI to some degree to power workflows, like I shared the accounts payable example, there's a lot of possibilities.
Perfect, perfect. I think from the audience as well, Pranay, 50% of all companies is saying, all founders on the call are saying they're thinking about an AI first approach to SaaS. Another 15-20% are, another 40% are saying they will be silently blending AI into the workflows. So your point on product innovation, pricing innovation, and distribution innovation is very, very pertinent for these founders as they think about their SaaS venture. I want a little bit segue into where is the opportunity, right? Now, if we were to put the SaaS opportunity into three broad buckets, right? Horizontal, which has always been, which is currently about 50% of all SaaS revenue. Then there is dev tools, which is SaaS for developers or people involved in the development lifecycle, all the way from product manager to developers and testers and stuff. And then there is vertical specific software. So horizontal is 50%, dev tools is 30%, and vertical is 20%. That's the current mix. Do you see this mix changing because of generative AI? Do you see this new opportunities coming because of the generative AI explosion?
Yeah. So my view is it's actually not about just generative AI, it's also about what the technology enables and what gives it right to win. So I think horizontal software has been overbuilt, right? And it has a place, absolutely, yes. It is extremely competitive as a market to win, right? And there's already a lot of smart, fast moving incumbents. So competitive construct, I worry about with horizontal software. That said, I have backed a lot of companies. I still believe there's a lot of broad horizontals where new innovation is possible, right? Uh, so we are still bullish about horizontal opportunities, but thoughtfully
But
so.
I think in the last few months we have seen CRM reimagined for generative AI getting funded. Similarly, I'm sure there's a HRM is reimagined for the generative AI world, or supply chain management reimagined for generative AI world is possible, right?
So
But I
think
agree with you. It's completely competitive.
Yeah, I think on the vertical side, I think competitive construct is interesting, and AI also there's some change, right? Because what happens is in AI, you need a data flywheel, right? And see, when I think about contact center, and the hard part with customer service is that it looks different, very vertical by vertical. Contact center operations are very different, right? If you think of retail and e-commerce also, customer queries will be very different. If you compare e-commerce to a bank, queries will be very different. Now, when you need to apply Gen AI for automation, it takes a lot of tuning to the last mile and edge cases and all of that to actually get it right and work end to end, right? So each of these deployments will be extremely custom, right? And it slows down the velocity, it slows down the sales cycle. As a company, you might not have an appreciation for all the nuance in that vertical. You might not have enough data to train or fine tune your models for that vertical or for that customer. So I believe vertical solutions can be better, right? And there are some horizontals which have this feature, right? Like I just said, customer service, e-commerce versus bank, very different. Now, if I go to IT, right, and IT support, we backed a company called Atomic Work building AI first IT service management. IT, has the same vocabulary at every company. You have your IBM desktops and laptops, you have MacBooks, you have Cisco Wi-Fi routers and networking equipment. Your employees want software installations or hardware devices, or they reach out to IT for help with password reset queries because they're not able to log into a system, right? The vocabulary is the same. The data looks very similar across all verticals. Now, can you use all of that data to train a better model? Possibly, yes. Right. So when I think about just technology out, data flywheels and similarity of customers, I think it suits itself better to vertical over horizontal. When I think about competitive construct, I think vertical software is less competitive than horizontal software. So I think those two sort of pull the favor in terms of vertical, but there will be opportunities in everything.
Understood. Got it. So you mentioned data flywheel. That triggers another question in my mind, right? And there are huge amount of incumbents who are already sitting on tons of data, right? So do you, because of this data that's already available to them, right, to start with, do you see generative AI favoring incumbents over upstarts, particularly in the SaaS space?
No, so again, no right answer. I think it's the battle as old as time. Incumbents have to innovate. Startups who have innovation have to figure out distribution. So can the incumbents innovate faster, or will new startups distribute faster? That becomes the question, right? And usually you'll find incumbents who are also slow and bureaucratic, right? So they might have the data, but putting it to work will mean like, oh, 10 different teams have to add it to their next quarter OKR, and then they have to come together and do 10 meetings to figure out a strategy. As slow by nature, right? So if you're in a category where the incumbent moves fast, then I would be scared. But otherwise, I would not worry about it too much.
Got it. That's very helpful. Quick audience pulse as well. The horizontal versus vertical is roughly split 50-50, right? So you have 44% saying they're building in the horizontal space right now, 46% saying building in vertical, and 10% in dev tools. Do you have any perspective on the dev tool space, Pranay? Or you club it into one of horizontal or vertical?
No, I think dev tools are very different, meaning the audience is a developer persona. But I'm just thinking out loud because I think like developer tools where it's more deterministic, opinionated, it's not everything doesn't have to be AI. So there are infrastructure companies which make it easier to build and deploy using AI feature sets, right? You have your vector databases and AI observability companies and all of that. That is fine, but no strong POV outside of that.
But I was thinking DevTools is actually a ripe opportunity for India because 40% of developers are in India, and you have access to customers here much closely, right? And you can observe them closely, understand their problems more deeply. So I would have expected
I think
DevTools.
for DevTools, I think just two words of advice. One is if you are building for developers, you have to build deep server side IP, right? Because if anything is easy to build, any developer can, recreate it in 2 weeks and do it themselves. And, it's anyways hard to sell to developers because they want to build everything, they don't want to buy. And if a CIO comes in and says, we need to buy this, a developer on his team will say, oh, you don't believe in us. Why are you making us buy stuff? We can build this ourselves, right? That's the dynamic. So you need an engineering manager or a VP or a CIO to actually advocate purchase of developer tools. And for that, it has to be very, very good and it has to be hard to build, right? The other problem that happens is if something is easy to build, someone else is going to build it in 2, 3, 4 weeks and put it on open source, right? And then you will not be able to monetize the opportunity. So I think dev tools have to be more of an IP game, and you have to ask yourself, what IP am I really building? How hard is it to replicate? And if someone comes and says that, hey, I built something in a month and next month I started selling and I'm able to make revenue, that is actually a bad signal, because if it is easy to build and easy to sell, it's also easy to recreate, right? So I think IP is very, very important, right?
Understood. Got it. No, that's very helpful. I want to quickly navigate to the geography question, which is a very big question in the SaaS world, right? 65% of people who have polled in have said they're building for both US and India, right? So is US and India a good choice, or should founders focus on which is US, which is the largest market already? does PMF in India mean anything for PMF in US at all? So how should founders think about this choice?
So I think pros and cons of each, right? So one is my general advice to founders is pick a market where you are going to be operating long term. If US is going to be the long term market, just build for the US on day zero, right? Don't get into this answer of US and India, right? And see, strategy is a question of saying no to things, right? So every time you say an and answer, you're actually not forcing yourself to make a choice and it hurts, right? So I think pick a long term market. If it is for India now and for the future, 100% build for India. If it is for the US, build for the US. If you want design partners in India, there is a more nuanced answer, right? So I'll talk about what problem happens and then I will talk about how to solve some of it, right? So see, when companies have tried to build for India and then go to the US, more often than not, they have failed. And they have failed on one of three reasons or multiple of these, right? One is PMF in most cases, it does look different, right? Like we are also investors in MoEngage, which is one company which has found success in the US. Now, if you're building mobile marketing automation for India, right? Everything is all communication is WhatsApp, all push notifications are Android, right? And then when you have blockers and all, we also have partnerships with like Android OEMs like your Huawei's and OnePluses of the world, where you have lock screen notifications and your push notifications don't get blocked, just quality of life. So we've built a lot of technology for Android ecosystem and WhatsApp. When we go to the US, people use Apple, so it's all iOS and it's iMessage, right? Now your product you built here does not work there, right? The second is in India, cost of hiring is low. So even if you take like a sales team or a contact center team, usually if you're building product in those categories, India, you'll ask someone, they'll say, we have 1,000 people in our call center, but our use case is very simple. So process complexity is low, scale is large. When you go to the US, cost of hiring is high. So they'll say, oh, we have 10 people, but we made them very efficient by investing in systems and complex process, right? So the what customers will ask you for in the product will actually be different, right? US, high process maturity, India, high scale, right? So I think PMF looks different. The second is if you don't go to the US early, actually building a brand takes time and it compounds over time, right? And the more customers you have, they feel good, they refer you to others. You are starting that cycle very late because if you onboard 5 customers in India, that is not helping over there, right? The third thing that happens is the cost structure changes. If you start in India, then go to the US. India, you can hire like a sales rep at a 20 lakh salary and give them a 1 CR or 2 CR target. US sales rep costs 250K, then the target has to be 1.5 million. Right now, are you able to operate at that efficiency to extract so much from one person? You're usually not. So then the economics don't work when you go and build a team over there. Suddenly you will realize you become like you're burning too much money, right? So I always say pick an answer and stick to it, right? And if you say and, the problem is, like companies which make the switch, internal decision making is hard because for sales and marketing, you can say, okay, now going forward, your target is the US, so I'll measure how many leads you are getting in the US. For engineering and product, they'll say, oh, you're building for that dream, but here in India, I have 20 customers paying me a few $1 million in revenue. They're banging on my door, asking me for features. Should I build that or should I build for this US PMF, right? So internally, decision making and prioritization becomes very difficult, right? And especially your support and success team will be after the life of the PM, right? He's like build features customers are asking, and he can't keep saying no, right? He'll also be under pressure. So that's where I think important to decide long term, right? Now, if you are onboarding, if the plan is to go to the US, you can still onboard a few design partners in India who are US like buyers. And usually, when I say US like, I say they actually have sophisticated process maturity. They spend on world-class software and they evaluate all the global competitors, right? If they're buying for cost, that is not the right answer, right? So even we've talked to some CISOs who buy software from Palo Alto Networks and CrowdStrike and Zscaler. Right now, it's a good thing to say if a startup can build for them and sell to them, then they are building actually a world-class product, right? If they're buying some antivirus software in India because it is cheaper, then they will tell you, you give it to me, but I'll pay you less than what I'm paying the current one. But they're not asking you for the right requirements. See, if someone is world class and they're using like a Palo Alto networks for security, they know what world class looks like. And then if they have problems which they're telling you, which you solve, they're asking you to be better than that company, right? Then you are building a product which will be really valuable globally, right? So onboard design partners in India, if they run a fair process, they spend money, they evaluate global comps and actually pick best in class software.
Got it. Now, for the 65% of founders who said they're building for US plus India, I think this is serious food for thought. Go back and ask the hard questions. I want to ask about depth of the Indian market. So Indian GDP is growing, it's expected to be 15 trillion. How do you view the software SaaS opportunity in India itself?
So I think there is opportunity. The question that a lot of people ask is it venture fundable opportunity? See, I think if you bootstrap and build a company for India, a lot of services companies do it, a lot of product companies do it. It can be a good business for you, right? Uh, can it be a large company with billions of dollars of valuation and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue? That is the question, right? And that answer keeps changing. Today, I think it is possible, but to make it happen, you have to sell to the biggest spenders, right? And in India, probably BFSI and government are like the biggest spending categories, right? So if you're catering to them, you understand what their IT budgets are going towards, and you're able to capture a large part of that, then it might be possible, right? I think the question is always, is it a venture fundable opportunity, right? So that I think nobody knows the answer.
There. I mean, you know that Salesforce is already more than $1 billion in revenue in India. Zoho Asia revenue is 150 to $200 million. So, like you rightly said, the pockets need to be identified carefully if you're going after the India opportunity. Quickly, I want to move to the customer segment, but ICP is a very, very crucial choice in the SaaS world, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the pulse of the audience, right, roughly about 85% have actually answered they're building for SMBs and mid-market, and 15% have said they are building for large enterprises, right? So if you're building from India for the world, right, is SMB and mid-market the right place to start from? Or do you see things changing? Can Indian companies go after the enterprise market in US from the word go?
Maybe I'll say 2, 3 things. First is, what is your definition of SMB versus mid-market? I'll actually say in my mind, there are 4 tiers. There is a very small business, which is teams of between say 1 to 10 or 1 to 25 people, extremely small companies. There is a small business, which is, let's say, companies between 25 to 250 or 25 to 500 employees. There is a mid-market, which is 500 to 5,000 employees. And there is a large enterprise, which is like maybe 5,000 plus or 10,000 plus, right? So within that, right, I'll ask this question to you, right? If I take mid-market companies with 500 to 5,000 employees, how many companies are there in the US? Yes.
Maybe million plus?
No, 500 plus employees, 500 to
500 plus employees, you're saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking maybe 40 to 100,000. No?
So there's around, you are in the right range. There are 40,000 companies, right? Between 500 to 5,000 employees. So it is actually very big, right? And if you think of a 1,000-member company, they're actually spending quite a lot on software, right? So it is a good landing point, right? So when I think about it, I think first, broad answer, more people should be building for mid-market, right? And going too low is a problem, right? Because when you sell to small businesses or these very small businesses, 2 problems happen. One is a lot of them just go out of business, right? So it becomes a very high churn business, annual churn between 30 to 50, 60%, because a lot of them will say, hey, I'm shutting down my company, or I don't have the budget to pay. And then they will jump to another free product, which is similar, right? So I think building a business and growing a business over there becomes very difficult, right? The second thing that happens is getting to these people is hard, right? Because see, ticket size will be low. They don't have very big budget. They have a small team, right? So sales velocity has to be high. Now, when I say high, even at Freshworks, we used to sell to SMB. When I left the company, we were getting 45,000 trial signups a month across all our products, right? That is actually a very large number, right? Now, creating that velocity is very difficult. So you need almost word of mouth, zero cost distribution, right? And if you are not able to get there, you cannot like spend your way to get access to these people because the economics will not make sense, right? If someone is giving me $100 a year, I cannot spend $100 on advertising, right? So I think small business, you need to figure out distribution almost in a Canva type of approach. And even after that, there will be a lot of churn. So it's like a leaky bucket, right? You can fill it as fast as possible, but water keeps falling, right? So I think I will force everyone to think about how can you build access to and how can you build for companies which are one level higher than your current stage, right? And most of our founders today, when I think about it, are targeting this mid market of companies with like 500 plus employees, right? At least that's the starting point.
Got it. How do you think founders should do customer discovery, especially when they are remote, right? Because this is a big challenge. You want to build from India for the world, but you are geographically remote from the customers. So how do founders think about becoming deeper or building deeper understanding of the customer's problem?
So I think it is one of those things where you do things that don't scale, right? And when you think of a founder, right, the difference between a founder and an operator is a founder has exceptional levels of belief, and a founder is someone who can just generate something out of nothing, right? So when I think about all our people, they look at all their past network, people they've gone to school with, college with, all of that, reach out to everybody, right? See where they are today, ask for introductions, but shake all the trees and these apples will fall, right? The second thing is travel over there. Now, I know people will say automatic reaction, it is expensive, right? And everyone has this expectation that I will be in the US for 7 days. I will have 6 meetings per day. So 100% ROI on time, 40 meetings in 5 working days, and I will come back. That is not how the world works, right? If you are physically co-located, you can go stay with a friend, sleep on their couch, doesn't matter. Do that. But if you are there, if you are local, serendipity happens, right? Where you run into someone or someone introduces you to someone else and meeting one leads to meeting two, three, four, five. It helps, right? So figure out how to make that happen. The other thing people do is cold outreach on LinkedIn, right? Or you look for warm intros where possible. Otherwise, I have founders who just are machines where they have a sales team, they're doing millions of dollars of revenue, but they will do 25 connects every day with target people, right? And you have to think about, is there a give before I get, right? Even if you talk to 10 people, summarize those learnings, make a report, you can send it to them and say, hey, here's something I created for people like you. Or you can say, hey, here's a report, I'm creating a deeper version, I would love to feature you, right? Why don't we talk, right? So you are actually giving something. Like one of our founders runs an excellent community. Rocket Lane has a community. He used to reach out to people and say, I have a community for 100 people like you. Why don't you join? Right? So instead of reaching out with a sales pitch, you are giving, right? Or after that, we started a podcast. They would reach out and say, we want to feature you on our podcast. And see, everyone aspires to build their personal brand, even in professional circles. So if you are featuring them as an expert on a topic and all, it's helping them grow in their career also. So people appreciate that, and after that, look out for you, right? So if you make it clear, like, okay, this is not a sales pitch, I just want to learn. That is like level 1 of outreach. Level 2 is, hey, I'm building a report. I would love to feature you. Can you give me a quote or can we talk for 10 minutes? Level 3 is, hey, I've built this community or podcast and I want to hero you and we'll do this joint GTM together, right? So there are ways to get around it, right? But if you want to get in front of them to speak to them, understand their problem, just generate, right? And hit people hard, get used to hearing no, it's okay.
Got it. Got it. Now, this is super helpful. I think we touched multiple parts. I will take last 5 minutes and then we can open up for questions from the audience, right? So you mentioned earlier that now it's kind of a flat world. and the best team will have to win in SaaS, right? In your mind, what is an ideal or a best team that can actually win in the SaaS space?
What is the best team? So I think, at least according to me, there are three dimensions. And I think the best teams will be exceptional in all three dimensions, right? So the first one is someone who can build great technology, of course. The second is a product visionary who actually has a view of how the world will operate in the future and what customers will be doing, right? And maybe Steve Jobs was actually a great example of this, right? Where Apple were creating products you also didn't know that you needed, right? So iPad was an example of that. iPhone, I think execution was much better than any other touchscreen smartphone before that, right? With capacitive screen and multi-touch and all. So they are just very good product visionaries, right? So good technology you are selling on all fronts. So there is one founder who is just exceptional at sales, right? So you have all three: technology, product, and sales or go to market. I think that combination is required.
Got it. No, that is super helpful, right? Our ideal combination is one with kick-ass product, kick-ass technology, and fantastic go-to-market and sales capabilities. Now, this is super helpful. We have about 10 minutes. I want to open up for a few questions. Neha, are there questions that we should answer?
There are a lot of questions, so why don't you pick?
Yes, let's pick a few from those, right? What do you think about application platform as a service segment? I will just morph this question a bit, Pranay. So we talked about software as a service. Now there's also the term that is being thrown out a lot, which is service as a software or outcome as a service. Right? It's going to morph into. Any thoughts around this?
No, for service, right? I don't know if it creates visceral reaction, but I think the way I think about it is service as software is not the right answer. The question is, who are you, right? Are you a product company or a service company, right? And we also sometimes get a bad rap that India does a lot of services, but not enough software, right? So I think, see, when I use this accounts payable model, like as an example, right? AI can do 70% of the job. So build, I think like product companies will actually get to that state of play. You will have a services arm within your product company, but it will still be smaller, but it will help your customer become successful, right? Like if you are doing this accounts processing, maybe that 30% where you have doubt, you can have a team which is just auditing all the invoices coming through wherever you don't know, or you have a marketplace of freelancers who can do it for you. So there is a service element because AI is probabilistic by nature, right? So you need some human oversight. So I think it's an important ingredient. But when people say service as software, what I'm hearing is, hey, I'm a services company. You tell me what you want, I will do it for you, right? And I think it might be a good business, right? There's a lot of profitable services companies, of course. It is not always a venture scalable business, right? That's the difference.
Got it. There are a few common questions around vertical, right? So question number one is, are there opportunities and niches within vertical that you think are underserved, right? Or even unserved? And that's one. And second is, how do you actually even discover these deep vertical opportunities? So any thoughts on this?
So I think first, I think there's hundreds of different verticals which deserve software which has not been built, right? So I think there's a lot of different verticals. The problem that I usually see is a lot of us are not aware of these verticals because of how the US operates, right? So even if you see, like there were companies like Square doing point of sale and billing systems, right? Toast came as a point of sale system for restaurants, right? So right from check-in reservation to outcome. Now in the US, there's a new company called Slice, which is doing point of sale systems for pizzerias, right? And they're saying just selling to pizza chains is like such a big business that it can be an independent company, right? Same way in the US, I know like uh, there are senior living centers, right, or old age homes is a very big business. Now someone's building vertical software for senior livings, right? Again, very large market, right? So I think there's a lot of verticals which are underserved. If you are able to build awareness or spot that opportunity, by all means, you should go for it.
Got it. Here's another interesting question. How do you decide between build before you sell or sell before you build? What
I
are
think you should
the
I think you should always talk to customers first, right? So I think step one should be speak to 50 people in your target persona, understand step by step what they do, how they are doing it, what pain points they are facing. So first build problem awareness, right? Just to double and triple verify, okay, is the problem real? Right? And if you're thinking about it day by day, week on week, I'm saying every week you should have a target of, okay, if this week I need to do 10 prospect conversations, it means I need to reach out to probably 400 or 500 people, out of which that reply rate will, obviously, there will be a funnel, and have those conversations, right? Once you talk to 40, 50 people, you have enough awareness on what is the real problem statement that is most important, and is it even real, right? Once you have that, then you start building your solution or mock or figure out what is your version of the solution that can also be tested with people, right? So I think you should always talk to customers before writing a line of code. See, it's easy to write code, and a lot of first time founders have this mentality of I will build something and people will find me, but it's always better to verify, right?
got it. Got it. Another interesting question. What is the right time for a CEO to move to USA? Is there a revenue target or threshold below which you stay in India and then you move to US?
Yeah. No, so I think this is actually a very good question, and there's a nuanced answer to it, right? The first thing I think about is you are building team over here, right? So do you have a people leader on the team who can keep the troops in India motivated, right? So you absolutely need that, right? If you're a solo founder or your co-founder is like more individual contributor mindset, doesn't like managing and inspiring people, defer it to later till you are able to hire a senior leader over here, right? The second is it depends on the category. See, if you're doing an SMB business where you're acquiring customers online, moving to the US, nothing's going to happen, right? Because you're not in the customer office, right? So I'm saying if you are selling to large customers where the face time matters, you have to make trips and eventually move. If you are in this AI ecosystem where partnering with other vendors and all of that matters, maybe for that being in the US is a little more important. If you have built a team over there and someone has to move and you're thinking about it, it's okay. But in the process, understand that over here, things need to be stable, right? That your team is humming, people are inspired and motivated to come into work every day and do a good job. You have steady leadership where you are not directly managing functions. So one of our portfolio companies, every time the founder traveled to the US for conferences, that month we knew we would miss our sales target. So we knew we needed like a sales leader in India who will keep the pressure on the team and keep the processes running smoothly so that this person can actually travel, right? So just I think stable team, motivated team, good leadership, which is operating without your intervention, all of those are important ingredients.
Got it. Next question, this is on open source LLMs, right? Open source LLMs are becoming bigger or gaining widespread adoption. Do you think open source will be more acceptable to enterprises now, given the widespread adoption of open source LLM?
So I think broad answer is yes. And I think the way I see this journey evolve is when people build MVPs, they might be using ChatGPT. So I think there's this MVP phase, right? There's a proving phase, right? And basically at that time, you're using a large general model, which just gets you to results, right? From the proving phase, then you go to the quality improvement phase, right? Where you're saying, okay, I'm at 85% output. I need to get to 90 or 95. Now, for that, there's a select set of queries where, this model is not working better. So let me put something else. Or, if this set of queries turns out to be, better served by a smaller fine-tuned model. So I'll take something open source and tune it to my use case. So there's like a quality scaling phase. And I think the third is a cost scaling phase, right? Where you sort of grown and then to manage cost, you are making these changes. So I think everyone will use a combination of like these large general purpose models and then smaller sort of open
Special
source,
purpose.
right? So I think that's the end state.
Got it. Another interesting question, which is, do you have any examples of founders doing things that don't scale in an AI first product? For example, somebody solving a multimodal AI use case using manual first and establishing the use case before building up the product. Any
No,
examples?
so 100%, right? So again, I spoke about Murph AI, right? AI voiceovers. So the first thing they do so they said, okay, we are building speech models. We want to test the quality. So we will not go to our friends, right? They said we will not give it to our own network of people because they will not give us brutally honest feedback of is this actually good or usable. They said we want unbiased feedback. Now they said, how do we get it? So they went and created speech like voiceover artist accounts on Upwork and Fiverr, right? Which is where people actually go to find, right? And when a client would come and sign up with them that I'm hiring you on Upwork to create a voiceover for me, they would actually reply to that person and say, hey, actually, we are an AI company. This is a sample of the work we've done before. Are you okay to try this out and see if it works for you? If yes, we'll do it. If not, by all means, go for someone else, right? So they were very direct and open and honest about it that we are using technology and we are not trying to fool you, right? But they wanted real feedback, right? And when they went to Upwork and Fiverr, they actually found a lot of good traction where people were using the speech output and saying it is good, I will use it in my video. So that was how they did the proving. Right. So I think there will be ways to do this. It's like I know a lot of people building like these medical coding startups for like insurance, US insurance workflow. So there's a doctor prescription, we need to create a medical code and then use it to claim insurance, right? Now you can go sell it directly to a healthcare company in the US, or you can sell it to a services company in India, which is already doing that work and automate their work for them, right? So maybe short term, this is an okay answer. So at least the model is being used and you are getting real feedback on whether it is good or bad. Does it work as a long-term GTM? Maybe not, because you'll get more margin if you're selling directly to a healthcare company, right?
Got it. I think we have just 2 minutes left. I want to do 3 rapid fire questions and then we'll close this, Pranay. First question, one idea that you'd have loved to see, but you have not yet seen in your deal flow.
I have not heard this before, so I don't have one answer. I have a lot of ideas. But yeah, maybe a company building like an integrations platform, but it is using like browser and front end instead of APIs.
Okay, got it. Second question, one mistake that you see Indian founders make often while evaluating SaaS opportunities.
I think just picking the right customer persona, right? Or not talking to enough customers before they build. And when I say customer persona, we'll come across a lot of teams who will say, okay, my target market is US mid market. When you see the customers, there'll be 5 startups or there'll be 5 Indian like JSW and Reliance and Adani type people. But that dissonance, right? So I think just picking the right customer persona and actually doing enough work over there and just being very sharp about it. Very important.
You shared multiple pearls of wisdom today on how to look at SaaS. If there is one advice, or just one advice for Indian founders wanting to build in SaaS that you want to leave with, what would that be?
I think be brave, right? So sell to larger companies, don't discount, actually charge premium price, right? Like we need to shed this perception that we are low cost product and just good enough product. You know, if a founder comes and says, hey, I'm an Israeli software company, they get +5 points for that. If we go and say we are Indian company, why do we get -5, right? So I'm saying be brave, actually build world-class product and then stand for it and say we are actually world-class. We will charge market price or a premium on that and we will not discount, right? And you will be surprised that people will not even flinch. They'll be okay as long as they think you are trustworthy and reliable. So I think just be brave.
Perfect. I think be brave. Fantastic thought to end the session with. Thank you so much, Pranay, for spending an hour with us. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing insights with our founders. Thanks again. Thank you everyone for dialing in as well. And we will share more details about it in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you.